Just want to say good morning, everybody. I hope that you all had a great start to this beautiful day, a lot of snowy weather in good winter fashion. I am so grateful to be here to share this space with you all, to be able to share some of my story and also bring my family and my community to this table, to this circle. I also want to just take a moment to honor and also ask for permission from our ancestors, from our Creator, from creation in general, the Mother Earth, all of the elements, the guardians of this space, of this land, the four directions, the elements, all the seeds, and also each and every one of you, including my child and my family back home, who I carry with me in my heart. I just want to recognize the organization of this great event, the organizations doing this work on the front line of this very, very important work that is stewarding in this next cycle of land-based work. And hopefully today we can help to influence that even further. So just want to, make that honor and make that recognition, and also give gratitude for creating this space for me to share with you all. My name is José Luis Agua y Tierra Ortiz y Muniz. I am a traditional land-based farmer from northern New Mexico. My people on my maternal side come from La Merced de San Antonio del Embudo, which is a land grant in northern New Mexico. And on my father's side, we come from La Merced de Santo Tomás el Apóstol del Río de las Trampas. Both of these land grants were not your typical ordinary Spanish land grant era spaces. These were land grants that were created for the purpose of protecting the pueblo, the indigenous pueblos, as well as the surrounding villas in that time, right around the 1730s. My ancestors come from Tlaxcala, Mexico. We were the first indigenous slaves brought to northern New Mexico with the conquest. We were placed in our village in alignment and collaboration with the indigenous communities to support their survivability and thrivability. Because my ancestors come from a land-based lineage, we were able to deeply root into our ancestral lands, and that's why I'm here today. So being able to honor those foremothers and forefathers to arrive at this point is a huge honor. I run an organization in northern New Mexico called the Sostenga Center for Sustainable Food, Agriculture, and Environment. Our space is in tandem and collaboration with Northern New Mexico College. I work alongside my mentor, Don Bustos, who is a global leader in agriculture and doing this land-based work, so that's a great honor for me. Him and I, years ago, about 7 years ago, identified the Sostenga Center as a place that had great need for revival. The center itself was opened back in 2007 as an attempt to create a system within higher ed that promotes agriculture outside of the conventional agricultural systems that we in northern New Mexico don't entirely align with. The project was greatly funded and eventually lost its resource and shut down. We felt like it was a great opportunity for northern New Mexico to revive culture, to revive land base, and to bring acequias and traditional agriculture at the center of higher ed, land-based learning. The elders and the community members that created this project put so much thought and energy into it that we could not let it die. And because it hadn't been cultivated, we felt that it was a great opportunity for us to not only revive a program, but also gather more information from the community, the surrounding community, to develop something that is not just impactful towards our culture, but is also regionally, culturally competent and relevant as a pathway to success outside of the typical agricultural American dream. What's unique about northern New Mexico that is different from many places in the world is that we have land grants and acequias. These are hundreds, if not thousands of year-old infrastructure, canals that carry water from the highlands across the mountain into the valley and is dispersed and spread out through all of the agricultural, arable lands in the region. Northern New Mexico has over 600 acequia systems. Acequias are not just the physical infrastructure of the water where it flows, but is actually some of the first examples of truly democratic organizing on this side of the planet. I feel like that's really important because when we talk about land base and communities, the essence and the spirit of democracy really is influenced by natural law, by examples of collaboration, mutualism, and it instills the growing of deep roots that results in the essence of what we call querencia. Querencia is the sense of deep knowing and belonging to place, space, and practice. It's the sense that gives a person a place of belonging. Acequia culture, acequia governance promotes that, not in rhetoric, but in practice. Mutualism is one of the foundational elements of acequia culture, and I feel it's a great model of how we usher in this new paradigm of land-based ways of living and knowing, which we feel is the only pathway forward. I'm a mayordomo for my acequia. My acequia is over 350 years old. My grandfather was also a mayordomo for that same acequia for 50 years. So it's a huge honor to be able to step in his footsteps and follow the same paths that he did 50, 60 years ago. In my village, San Antonio del Embudo, they now call Dixon, my family has cultivated that space for many, many generations. These acequia systems influence our survivability in an arid region that survival would be impossible without them. Acequias as an infrastructure are not a new thing to this region. We know that they existed before Europeans stepped on this side of the world and were used as a guiding reference point to every bit of our cultural and land-based ways of life. With that as a foundation in northern New Mexico, what resulted was an incredible sense of sustainability, sovereignty, and freedom, true freedom, the ability to sustain yourself and not have insecurities around food and survival. These principles and values that come from this way of life for northern New Mexico instilled a strong sense of culture and a strong love for our people, our land, and our common spaces that we shared. Acequia communities don't just navigate the areas that we irrigate, we steward, we manage, we cultivate, we grow entire watersheds. We don't just plant seeds, we plant water. And that is a very important element in northern New Mexico. The last 100 years has been a really difficult transition for us in northern New Mexico. Northern New Mexican communities have been given title of identity that isn't accurate to our historical relevance in our region. We are told that we are something that we're not, and we have adopted that within ourselves, which has displaced and uprooted our sense of identity, our sense of being, and our sense of belonging. With that, we've seen in the last 100 years, mostly within the American era, degradation of our leadership capacities. I can go into the historical wars and battles and violence and displacement that my people and my community has faced as detribalized, undocumented, unrecognized, land-based indigenous people. But I will leave that history for you all to research as you all go home on your own time. For me to cover 500 years of that history would take me much longer than the time that I have today. And I'm like, how do I cover 30 years for every second? So with that, developing the Sostenga Center, reviving it, really was rooted in developing the leadership capacities of our community. Acequias, land grants, these are community self-governing systems that rely on principles such as you reap what you sow. We call it el que pone saca. What you put in, you reap the benefits of that. It is a beautiful example of how community comes together for purposes beyond religion, beyond economic survivability. It really is about building cohesive relationships within each other, regardless of whether or not we get along or align in principles or values. The acequia forces us to see each other face to face. It forces us to share space with each other and overcome those odds. The acequia spirit is one that promotes cohesive, collaborative, as well as accountability within our community to show up not just for yourself individually, but for your family and for the community at large. Using that model as an example, not just looking at the technology of acequias and how they've withstood the sands of time, how through technological changes, many acequias have not changed much for the last couple hundred years, really is a testament of the power behind these types of systems. So with the Sostenga Center and my work with Don Bustos, we really aim to utilize acequia culture as the example, as the teacher, as the elder, as the leader, and identifying that through the times we have lost a lot of our leadership capacities to be able to maintain this beautiful, rich land base within a landscape that has incredible capacity to sustain not just us, but our communities downstream and upstream. Right now, what we're really identifying is some of the greatest needs, and I see this not just within our local communities in northern New Mexico, but I see this worldwide, are topics such as leadership development, developing the next generation of land-based, seed-based, water-based, agricultural-based stewards, developing programming that is culturally competent, technologies that is culturally and regionally relevant, and information that aligns with regional information that supports the cultivation of foods, medicines that work. What we have found in northern New Mexico, this modern industrial agriculture does not work for us. We don't come from 10,000 acre farms, 2,000 acre farms. Our farms are 3 acres, 10 acres, 15 acres. And how do you fit that model within the modern agricultural concept that is taught globally in industrial agriculture and through agricultural colleges throughout? For us, it didn't work, and what's been the result is incredible land loss, culture loss, the loss of information, the malpractice of sciences that has impacted our soil health, which has also impacted the health of our own gut, our own ability to see through our resilience, our resistance, our ability to continue to survive without dependence on outside forces or greater systems. I feel like also land grants and acequias, what they teach is unity. Acequias don't discriminate. You can be from anywhere in the world, and as long as you put a hand to help, you will reap its benefits, which I think is a beautiful example. It's not, oh, you're from Europe, no, you're not allowed. You're from Mexico, oh, you're not allowed. It's, you're willing to work the earth, you're willing to work the land, you're willing to engage in community, yes, please, come. We want that. I feel like the pathway forward is guided through systems that are aligned with natural law, that are aligned with community principles and values, are what these movements need in order to successfully chart a pathway forward. Being able to have a teacher that goes beyond the rhetoric or the academic language, but puts into practice ways of living and knowing that takes care of your neighbor, that takes care of your relatives upstream, and also honors those downstream, the mutual sharing of precious resource. These are the examples that this movement around regenerative agriculture, this movement around practices that are land-based and healthy need. For far too long, we have seen individuals come into our communities, learn from our elders, learn from our life way, and then use a language that not even we understand. The implications that that's had on our community's ability to thrive is incredible. We often see our own culture presented to us. We often hear our own culture spoken, but not by our own people. And I think that one of the things that this movement can really embrace is really putting into practice the notion that land-based farmers are the best scientists. They are the best teachers. They are the individuals that hold not just the science of agriculture and farming and soil health, but the spiritual and land-based practice of it, deeply rooted querencia. Acknowledging that indigenous communities and land-based communities are the foremothers to this movement is vital. It is vital not just for the survival of everybody, but also the survival of those very communities who upheld a healthy practice that has given us all the privilege to be able to cultivate lands of soil that are rich and healthy, and still, hundreds of years later, still continuously producing food, medicines, and identities that uphold some of those natural principles that I mentioned earlier. Acequia communities throughout northern New Mexico over the last 100 years have not been led by multi-generations. It's been led by elders who don't have a next generation to pass off. Land-based communities in northern New Mexico and throughout are experiencing exodus. They're experiencing our youth leaving and our lands being fallow. As a mayordomo, it's a hard reality to step through my community and walk the paths of my grandparents and see in real time the erasure and the death of my people and my culture. I'm always faced with that reality, and it's heavy. It's really hard to, exist in that way. Traditional ag, indigenous agriculture, land-based wisdoms, as the foremother to this movement, honors the historical impact, the knowledge, the wisdoms, as well as the seeds and the land. If we all can align in honoring those elements and others, it really puts us at a place of equity and equality. It allows us to humanize each other and see each other within each other. I feel like my message today to share with you all as you all travel back home and put into practice this work and revive your soil using nature to do that work and being stewards that highlight and amplify the powers of mycelium, the powers of soil health, and how we are directly tied and connected to that with our hands in the soil. It's great sometimes to not have to be the boss and to be able to give that power to a greater force, greater creator. And I think that's the essence of spirituality that my community still to this day, despite the challenges that we face, still uphold. It's integral that we practice these principles and values as we grow into other spaces and share land and space with others so that the work that we do has a staying power. We always say that the land is very forgiving, that seeds are very gracious. Acequia and land grant, culture, indigenous life ways are evident of that. And I just want to encourage you all to go beyond the outer fences of your farms, to go beyond the agricultural, technical support provider organizations and institutions, to engage with other farmers, to engage with your neighbors. I believe that communities who are just a generation or two removed from that land base still have within their genetic memory the ability to put this practice to work. If we can strip away the negative impacts of modern academic agriculture and tie back into our humanity, what we can discover through that is an incredible health. We need our neighbors. We need each other, upstream, downstream. We need to empower those relationships, not through rhetoric or through idea, but through real practice. We need to marry each other in ways that produce resilient outcomes. Land-based communities are inherently in this position. Despite the struggles, today we are still in this position, and I think that anybody in my community and communities throughout land-based villages and whatnot, it's very easy for us to welcome those people who want to participate in the revival of our land, our culture, and our traditions. So as you all journey back home and put to thought some of the things that I've shared with you today, I want you to take the bold step to listen and to support without being the leader, to support traditional communities, their own survivability, because we need everybody. If we follow nature and the example of natural environments, what you will find in the most healthy of spaces is an abundance of diversity. Nature relies on diversity to produce health. We are a part of that nature, and if we can embody those principles, those teachings, our families, our communities, our future will be founded upon healthy principles guided by a teacher that is always present, that is always there. The incredible need for stewarding the next generation of farmers, as we all, every five-fingered being has an agrarian heritage. I don't believe that there is a teaching element in agriculture. I believe that it is a remembering element of agriculture. So as you journey through your farming, through your stewarding, and through your advocating, through your activism, through your spirituality, through your connection to the earth, through your overall health, through your gut, there isn't a whole lot that I can teach you, but by being and by practicing these traditional land-based principles, there's a lot that I can help you remember. So my message today is one that is rooted in remembering the roots of our connection to the earth, is remembering how to be in collaboration with each other, how to dismantle and heal the historic implications and traumas of our reality and our truth. And I also just want to challenge you all to transform the paradigm of your home, of yourself, through the foods that you eat. We know the impact of processed chemicals, the impact of pharmaceuticals, the impact of violent resource extraction, the clear cutting of our mountain ranges, our rivers, our waters, they're drying up. And the only solution to that is a remembering of how to steward, how to develop practices that are rooted in querencia. That can only come from mutualism. That can only come from sharing. That can only come from acts of love, of care, and of balanced coexistence with each other. Acequia and indigenous communities in northern New Mexico are one of the teachers that the world needs. And if this tradition and this culture is allowed to die, it will be the final nail in the casket of the work and the dreams that we're visioning towards. Being able to synchronize with you all and share this space is also evidence that we are doing something right. We're on the healthy side of this future. And if we don't unify across generation, across culture, across tradition, across political lines, across orientation, across ancestry, if we can't follow the example of nature, of the principles of you reap what you sow, of mutualism, identity as it relates to space and place, then all of this work that we do and these seeds that we plant, these beliefs that we uphold, the lessons that we've learned, will all have been in vain. So here's my call. Join acequia communities in northern New Mexico. Join land-grant communities. Join indigenous communities to see through this vision and this change that we all have. We are without a doubt united. We are without a doubt related. We are without a doubt together in this land-based work. We need to challenge ourselves to go beyond, to do what hasn't been done, to push our own healing, to be able to embrace our neighbors upstream and downstream. We can't defend water if we don't use it. We can't defend land if we're not appropriately cultivating it. We can't defend each other if we don't have founded relationships. So the marrying of our ways, the marrying of our relationships is a vital element to this pathway forward. So here's an invitation. When you all are traveling through northern New Mexico and you see these beautiful mountains and you're like, wow, I had no idea that New Mexico was like this. I thought it was just a desert. Visit, cultivate your relationship, and listen. We're beyond the point where technocrats and academics, politicians are highlighted as the leaders. We are at a place where farmers, where grandmothers, where our youth are amplified in their leadership capacities. We're beyond the point of speaking. We are in the place of doing. Together we can truly make this happen, provided we go beyond the ego, beyond our traumas, beyond our hardships. We are already sharing that hardship. Let's share in the celebration, in the appreciation, in the acknowledgement, in the recognition, in the survivability, in the sustainability, in the resilience of a future that is not clouded by boundary, borders, but is provided information and knowledge from natural examples like rivers, like the birds that fly, like our seasons. On behalf of my family, my child, my relatives, my community, de Nuestro Señor San Antonio del Río Embudo, Santo Tomás el Apóstol del Río de las Trampas, and my indigenous ancestors, I stand here with great gratitude and also this feeling of importance that, yeah, it's an environmental catastrophe that 90% of my village's agrable lands are fallow, that 90% of our water passes us by and is not used to cultivate community and agriculture. But on the beautiful side of that too, we're posed with an incredible opportunity of revival and survival through principles and values that we know are stronger than modern technologies, that have withstood drought, the negative impacts of colonialism, the negative impacts of supremacy, chemicals. So yeah, thank you so much for giving me this space. Thank you for the organizers and the organizations that are working to create this space. And back home, I hope that this inspires you to find those individuals that are going to help you, that you're going to help them take these bold steps forward with principles and values that are aligned with nature, with health, and let's eat some really good, healthy, high nutritional, high vibrational, high level, homegrown, locally sourced, farmer raised, quote unquote organic, what I call organic plus, regenerative plus, in celebration for what we are feeling within ourselves as to come. Muchas gracias. I hope that y'all's trip back home is safe in this storm. I wish goodness upon you and your families and blessings to your community. And reach out. I want nothing more than to build a relationship with you all and align in synchronicity towards these principles and values. And let's raise our kids together. Let's grow food together. And let's share in spirituality. God bless you all. Thank you. Muchas gracias. All right, any questions from y'all up there?
We're going to do one question virtually, and we'll do one question in the audience. So maybe I'll ask the virtual one while we're working on getting a microphone up. Could you? Hello. All right. Okay. Could you speak to how climate change is affecting water resources and your traditional practices in your community?
Great question. I'll say that, Acequia communities, I feel, are some of the best climate change scientists. We see changes at the minimal level. We see our fruit trees blooming in the fall. We see the amount of water that's coming down our acequias and our rivers. I, in my lifetime, have witnessed several rivers go dry and stop flowing. We're experiencing more and more what we call repartamiento in acequia communities, which is a point in time in the year when we recognize there's not enough water. So now we must share and we must prioritize. Not only do acequia communities have the resilience to deal with and mitigate the impacts of climate change, but also to share the examples of how climate change is impacting us. So dry acequias, less farmland being cultivated, communities not seeing survivability in agriculture anymore. And I feel like the solution to climate change is the appropriate use of land and water, is the traditional use of land and water, planting water with water by using water, and then again, developing the next generation of land-based stewards that can, make that impact and also inform policy, inform the development of projects and programs that highlight climate change as a factor of struggle, and also a great reason and that provides importance to put some of this work on the ground.
Yeah, wait. Okay, we got a question in the audience? Yes. All right. Hi, Lawrence.
Hi. I just wanted to ask you about, especially when you mentioned that there's about 90% of the water that's not being used now, and I come from a land-based acequia culture in southern Colorado, real close to the state line. But, Colorado became a state quite in 50 years or more before New Mexico did, and they're enforcing all the water laws over there, and they've had it where if you don't use it, you lose it, and they've been taking it, and I know New Mexico hasn't been enforcing that yet, but it's going to come. especially because of climate change and whatever issues and the lack of water. So is there in your community any, are they doing anything to understand and try to make sure they get those lands cultivated again and before they lose it?
Yeah, great question. The use it or lose it reality for acequias is a very dangerous concept, right? It says that if you don't use your water, you're going to lose it. And right now, because so much energy and focus has been given to industrial agriculture, and they have taken completely over our food systems, yeah, acequia communities aren't producing as much as they once did. Water adjudications are happening throughout northern New Mexico. New Mexico law can't enforce the water law of use it or lose it until an adjudication has occurred. And an adjudication is a legal lawsuit proceeding that quantifies how much land compared to how much water, what's being used, and then they make a decision on that. That doesn't account for climate change. That doesn't account for culture loss, tradition loss, and in traditional communities in northern New Mexico, there is no separation of land and water. So the ideas of like use it or lose it are dangerous for future generations down the road. I don't see a systemic, institutional, statewide government effort or push to put land back into production, but what I am seeing is a impulse from acequia, land grant, land-based, and agricultural communities throughout, this impulse that's coming from the spirit to return to the land. And I think that right now is a really perfect time for people to take that bold step before adjudications really start to spread. And that's why I highlight leadership capacity, right? So how do we defend water if no one is at the table for adjudications or even management of our acequia self-governance systems? People aren't being taught how to do Robert's Rules of Order, how to hold a meeting, how to do an open meeting, how to follow the Office of the State Auditor, follow the law, to uphold our political and agricultural willpower as it relates to our water access and water source. So the Sostenga Center was created and revived for that specific purpose, which is to support our communities' not only ability, but knowledge and capacity of leadership to utilize our resource in the most appropriate way possible, mostly agriculture, livestock, and whatnot. So the Sostenga Center, our vision, and we all have these great ideas, and over the last 5 years, we've gone through a process really intentional about not just implementing our ideas, but gathering from the community so that we are able to implement programming that comes from the bottom up, that comes from the farmers, that comes from the people who are actually doing the work, and also those that aren't. Because, as I said earlier, acequia communities, we don't discriminate, so you don't have to be a farmer to have a voice, right? Everybody's voice is welcome. So, yeah, the work that's being done is mostly on the grassroots. The organizations that navigate advocacy within the legislature are doing their part. We're trying to aim towards a holistic wraparound movement in northern New Mexico and throughout that highlights, amplifies, and uplifts everybody's voice so that the information that's provided is relevant, competent, and also holistic in its nature of having diversity of perspective. The only way that we can challenge that type of perspective of paper water is by using it. And the Sostenga Center, the Green Roots Institute, the Rio Frijoles, Rio en Medio, Rio Quemado, Rio Santa Cruz Streams and Ditch Systems Association, acequia associations throughout, though they might not be in practice today, still have woven within its querencias, within its culture and its traditions, the notion that the only way to defend water and land is to utilize it in a way that isn't extractive and doesn't dismantle our upper watershed. So stewardship is what we're aiming towards. We're behind for all the reasons, intentionally and non-intentionally, but we definitely are aligned in that the next step towards the protection of these vital resources and our world's ability to sustain itself in a healthy way is through appropriate use. One more question?
I think we actually have to wrap it up, but are you going to be at a round table?
I am doing a roundtable.
Which round table is yours?
Good question. Can't answer
You can find Jose Luis at a round table that you can look at in your program, because I don't know off the top of my head either. Thank you so much for joining us. Thanks for a beautiful talk.